Man-eating monsters roam the remains of a once great city, cloaked in the shadows of its rubble skyline. Almost unaffected by bullets and knives, the most a remaining human can do is run from them, desperate to make it back to any hint of civilization, albeit more lawless than before, and somehow devoid of any information about the disaster which ended this world 15 years prior. Whether scavenging through old homes and down towers or farming on a commune, no life is exactly carefree. In one approximation of civilization live Haruki and his older sister Kiruko, the latter racing to make them, and their orphanage, the money they need to live. At least until a man-eater appears on the tracks, seen only by Haruki after the race has started. With a few minutes before the race heads that way, and his sister leading it, he runs towards the monster to try and fend it off, only being consumed by it instead. Turning the corner after it's already too late, Kiruko throws her cart into the monster, causing it to flee, and pulls what remains of her brother from its grasp. With his sister crying over him, Haruki takes a few last breaths from what remains of his body, and then loses consciousness. And then he wakes up. Shocking the medical staff who run to tell the doctor he has miraculously survived, stepping out of bed and... right there. That's where you know something is wrong. Proprioception is, roughly, our ability to tell where our limbs are within space. When you get out of bed in the morning, you don't have to look at the ground to know how far to swing your legs out, you just do so, hitting a comfortable landing each time. Have you ever been surprised by the position of the floor, even in an unfamiliar room? It's this brilliant moment of show not tell which gives you the hint you need. Haruki was the younger brother. We see him right next to his sister and know he was just a bit shorter. That is, he expects the floor to be further away than she would. As is revealed shortly after, he's survived by his brain being transplanted into her body. If you're writing a story, this is the kind of stuff that will make it better. You let the viewer think what a bad show would have the characters say. But aside from being a miniature lesson in writing, it also establishes our topic for today, the body swap, and its horror. If we trace me onto you, you wouldn't just carry on like normal. The entire way in which you interface with the world would become alien. Do we know what that really means? Do we know just how much we've mastered and rely on our own shapes? I mean, we can only ever have experienced this world through our forms, and so within each of us exists a different one depending on our body. With a swap then, the world itself becomes different. That's what we'll be exploring today, starting with elements which are common in all of our planned stories, Heavenly Delusion, Your Name, and Dead Dead Demons, before tapping what each one uniquely adds. The first principle is that the actions our minds want to take, and the actions our bodies actually can, become mismatched in a body swap. That is, we don't often consider just how much mastery of our own forms we have to develop. For example, are you actually a good judge of distance? Could you look at an object across the room or down the street and say how many of a certain measurement away it is? Probably not. But when you go to pick something up in your peripheral, or that you've recently looked at or away from, an act that requires you knowing how far away it is, 99 times out of 100, you do it flawlessly. Our brains unconsciously calculate how much our bodies have to move at almost every moment, working not in feet or meters, but in, well, use. It's not human constructs through which we touch the world, but our own bodies, deep in our minds, aware of how much we specifically need to move to accomplish any action. So if you swapped bodies with someone else, you'd struggle to get out of bed, to pick up things around you, to do anything that was between you and some other physical thing, because the way the world is scaled around you changed and needs relearning. It's as if you were a child discovering distance for the very first time. And how much depends on this? Writing, walking, driving? So much could suddenly become dangerous because you think something is a U away, but it's actually a 1.2 U away now. at the start, you wouldn't be able to trust what feels natural in this new body. Or at least that's how some stories present it. Others skip over that element, which, could be valid. And maybe the signals from the mind convert to the measurements of the body or something like that, which seems to be the case for Your Name. And while I have my issues with a story that only does whatever is most dramatic instead of what makes sense, the first one-third of the movie is pretty hefty on the consequences of body swapping. It follows Tokyo boy Taki and small-town girl Mitsuha, who randomly swap bodies about half the times they fall asleep. The oddness becomes apparent the first time Mitsuha wakes up as Taki and, well, let's just say has more on the outside of her body than she's used to. Of course, it's mostly played for the joke, but the joke is that it would be really weird to suddenly have a part of your body that you're not used to. An arm is an arm at the end of the day. It would mess you up at points, but it would be pretty unconscious until it did. But when something new suddenly appears on you, you'd be conscious of it at all times, kind of like getting new glasses. You're continuously uncomfortable because there's a foreign touch and weight to it, a brand new kind of sensation. The same goes for Taki and her body, as he spends a bit of time understanding the feeling of his chest. But it's more curious than not still, because this isn't feeling them, this is feeling the feeling of feeling them and feeling them. It's a sensation he could never have because there is no body in that space for him usually. Jumping would feel different, lying down would feel different, the way you lean to avoid a corner would be different, and all while they'd be conscious of this uncomfortable feeling. As Heavenly Delusion adds, the same goes for something like speaking. Like, speaking feels like something because our voices are just different vibrations, we just aren't aware of it anymore. Haruki reaches for his sister's throat because it is literally not what speaking is supposed to feel like as far as he knows. So with a swap, you don't just have to relearn how to use the body, but also how to be comfortable in it too. And as we've gotten into time and time again, a body isn't actually personal in our world. Other people always see us before they can know us, and so if a certain presentation has expectations, those will be placed on us before anything we choose. This goes for class status, age, family, and much more, but as we see specifically in these stories, location and gender. Taki has no idea of all the things women have been made to be constantly aware of, like how visible a school uniform skirt makes you and how to avoid it, or how people will stare at certain parts or think less of you for being messy. It's actually quite the opposite of the things he would be praised for as a guy. Men are typically rewarded for being loud, bold, confident, so he learned to do those things, like getting in fights as we see with the patch on his face. But now he's expected to be reserved, shy, modest, and so he's treated differently for the same qualities he's always had, his real ones. Meanwhile, Mitsuha experiences the social side of this as well, when she offers to fix a coworker's skirt by saying, well, just take it off, without thinking about how different bodies could change that context. All of her life, she could say this, and no one would think anything of it, but now it has a whole ugly history to it that she's never considered when approaching another woman. She's living in a different context than the one people are actually seeing her in, and that only becomes apparent when she slips up because the expectations of her form became natural to her. Essentially, everything they took as natural and got praised for is now unnatural and admonished. They don't just have to relearn movement, but the behavior that goes with it. The same kinds of consideration go for location. Where is the person being swapped with? Where are they from? Where have they been that you might not have ever seen? We're much more socialized to our locations, an aspect of the body essentially, than we may think. Mitsuha is used to small town vibes, walking to school in the middle of the lane because everyone knows everyone and there's no traffic, so the drivers just move over. Maybe they even stop and chat for a second on the empty road. If you're pushing and shoving in her town, you're an asshole because there's space not to do that. But in Tokyo, it's the opposite. You basically have to get where you're going in that mass of people. And if you stop and talk in the middle of that, everyone is going to hate you. Once again, the same qualities entirely change results based on where they're being expressed. The location of the body is just as important as the body itself. While we know ourselves by our minds, in the disconnect of individualism, others know us first by our forms and the form's context. Unable to see inside of us, we're left to their devices, and their places' devices, and even more. Mixing all of this together is memory. What we remember of ourselves and what others remember or see of us is now different. Mitsuha is shocked to hear people joking that she actually remembers her name today, because the first time Taki was in her body, he spent the whole day not responding to not his name, because it's not his name. But to everyone else, it clearly is. Or, as happens in Heavenly Delusion, Haruki will say he's 18 to have to correct himself to say 20, the age his sister would be, not the age he actually is. This is the case for anything which is a natural reaction of the mind. You have to make the conscious unconscious and the unconscious conscious. For things that are common enough, a name, an age, this would be easy to get used to eventually. But what about things that don't come up enough to be considered before they're said? If Haruki in Kuriko's body or Taki in Mitsuha's overhear some guys talking about a usual guy issue and they just naturally respond with something like, I know, right? What's going to happen? Ideally, there should be no issues or assumptions about something like that, but this topic's already shown that there often are. Something like that will draw attention, which, if it leads to the wrong kind of conclusion, can also draw hate as well, severely confusing the idea of who that person is. The same could go for location. Say Mitsuha responds to a picture of the countryside with, "Oh, it is so pretty in person," to a friend who knows Taki has never been there. Now she has this weird mismatch to explain away. Almost every natural reaction becomes like that now. And explaining them away has one natural conclusion: to make oneself worse. Because let's consider the situation. One of them has just said something very odd, maybe even impossible about themselves, like giving the wrong age. This could be explained away with a paperwork mishap or parents lying, something of that sort. But these options raise even more questions. How did that mishap happen, and why have they never heard of it before? Why would someone's parents lie to them about their age, and how did they find out? In a chain of events, there's always the next thing back to be doubted too, and you quickly end up with a sitcom-level spiral of lies. So you have to go to the source. Make it a quality about yourself instead of a situation around you. Rely on inherent character. As Haruki says, he's just bad at math. That's why he said the wrong age. It makes him seem kind of dumb, but that's the point. It's about him, who he is that he can't help. We all know someone who's just terrible at math, and we don't question them on why, because it's just them. Same goes for forgetfulness. Even if we don't like it and its consequences, we don't question it. In response to negative events, there will be a negative cause. And so to go unquestioned about these mismatches, their best option is to take on a negative quality as the cause. It makes them worse, but it keeps them safe, because who's going to believe a body swap? This leads to the safest way to do things. Don't have natural reactions at all. What we've seen so far is that the body swap requires one to police their own behavior, to stop being natural, so won't this eventually go all the way? It does for Haruki, at least. Staying in a small inn with Maru, a boy searching for heaven that he's acting as bodyguard for, they witness the keeper trying to defend a man-eater because it ate her son, and based on its behavior of not attacking her, she believes he's still inside of it. It almost seems that way, and then it slices her up and consumes her. But only after it was injured and threatened. Was it actually the son, but maybe instinct took over from the injury? Was it simply a matter of conditioning, because it knew keeping her alive meant a consistent stream of prey? It's never clear, and one's imagination is left to run in tragic directions, as Maru's does, crying and yelling at the loss, especially annoyed that Kiruko isn't doing the same. Coldly, watching as this monster eats a kind human who helped them, all she does is call out the weakness in its attack that they can exploit to kill it. How could anyone think so logically at a time as horrific as this? Haruki can because he always has to. It still impacts him, he's still crying, but survival to him has expressly become not having natural emotional reactions because in his sister's body those could only ever cause conflict. This is what learning how to be a new person means. If you have two naturals, then neither is. Everything has to be logic, expectation, cold calculation, exactly what we see from him time and time again. This mindset isn't just about a harsh world, it's the only result of not really being able to have a self at all. A similar kind of thing happens to Taki. He wakes up to some plans that he didn't make, a date with his coworker Okudera, the one that every single guy who works there has a crush on. They've gotten close in recent weeks, or at least she thinks they have, but in reality the feminine side of him she likes is just Mitsuha, someone who's able to understand her better than Taki ever did. He might have had the crush, but he never actually had the knowledge or the match to do anything with it. So now, when he's getting what he would have wanted, well, it doesn't feel right because she knows a Taki that just isn't real. She likes him for what he's not, and so it's like he's being forced to lie to her, acting out a role someone else set forth, and quite literally in these plans, following the actions without the motivation. This is supposed to be a huge, great thing, and he can't even enjoy it because it isn't built on his efforts or his real character or anything. He flounders on this date for a few reasons, but a major one is that it kind of makes him feel not human. What else do we call taking someone else's actions and being seen as something one is not? The body swap isn't just losing your form, it's slowly losing your natural self. But these two swaps have had a lot in common still. The language has been the same, the location's similar enough, the age is not very different, and the class is consistent. There's a lot more that could change. I mean, what if you swapped bodies with an entirely different species? This is what happens to Oba, or at least what he comes to be known as in Dead Demons DDDD Destruction. He's an invader, a kind of small alien creature that came to Earth aboard a mothership which has been hovering over Tokyo for years now. On one of the first small vessels sent out upon its arrival, one which immediately crashed, Oba's invader body was fatally wounded, and to survive, the others performed a taboo, placing him inside of a nearby human's body so he could survive. Given that the Earth, driven by the US, declared war almost immediately, and even to this day continues to do so and obfuscates the truth of the invaders, the ones who did this to him can't stick around, so instead Oba wakes up in the care of human beings who think he's one of them. This is basically the extreme of our other situations. Everyone else could at least communicate still, but Oba isn't even able to understand what's happening around him. He doesn't even have a concept enough of Earth language to know which side should be up on an ID card. He has no idea what the customs are, no idea what the procedures of the hospital he wakes up in are. Maybe he doesn't even have a hospital because their technology is more advanced, doesn't know what laws are common on Earth, any of it. Would you even start considering all of this? And there wouldn't be much leeway to get that start either, because people expect a certain level of knowledge from a certain kind of form, in this case, age. If he cuts in a line or walks on a red light, people won't say, oh, he doesn't know, someone help him, he's just a kid. They'll say, he should know better. Because even if socially he's a human child, physically he's a human teen, and that communicates something. Experience. You can't be a teen without having first been a kid, so a teen doesn't get the graces of one, even though this one needs them. With all of this, and with the chance to out himself as something people surrounding him are actively trying to kill, what is there to do but nothing? All he can do is sit there and observe, slowly trying to logic out what human behavior itself is. So this is what he does. Years after the swap, still keeping to himself and surviving by sneaking into a predictable man's apartment. He can speak the language now, but is still missing the social constructs because, well, what logic do they really follow? As in, could an alien actually learn them, especially after being naturalized somewhere so different? Think of body language, or texting, non-spoken communication. Is all of this natural, or is it a learned behavior? given how varied cultures are across the world, and the fact that when I was born you couldn't even text people, it's likely the latter, which means the underlying logic is actually quite complicated for an outsider. I mean, how many times have you thought, man, that's weird, about what's normal somewhere else? For the outside, these customs may not have a natural pattern because they aren't natural, they're social. This is why Oba is a terrible liar, with body language giving him away. He's not used to having a facial expression visible to others, so he has no idea how to control it. He's not used to having a body which is so big and exaggerated, so every movement he makes is larger than he remembers. Or how he says lol out loud like a word, because he interacts with very few humans, but can read their conversations online all day. Now, in invader culture, they might not have a concept of text acronyms because their communication might not be physically limited to typing out the characters like ours is, and that's the aspect which necessitates shortcuts. So, seeing this, he would just assume that it's a word like any other, how people speak, and since no one explains what LOL means anymore because it's so socially saturated, it just becomes speech to the outsider. This kind of species-based body swap reveals that we're actually carrying tons of social baggage to understand the world around us. And when the underlying assumptions are different and have no way to be challenged, everything which follows will be wrong and almost unlearnable. In this situation, that means he can almost never risk connection. The only way he's ever able to is a chance encounter with Oron, who breaks the pattern of that man's apartment being empty at a certain time, leading to his reveal. And then, this reveal doesn't lead to violence only because, well, Oron is weird. Constantly shouting about bringing desolation to humanity and hating our silly ways, she despises everything human, meaning she's obsessed with everything not human, like Oba. She takes him in basically on the spot and slowly introduces him to other people. And it's only through this dedicated coaching that he's able to learn truly natural behavior. And this was a very rare chance. I don't think almost anyone else would have done the same. Without Oron, he would still be alone. So with that fateful swap, Oba didn't just become someone else, he became no one. Trapped between two worlds, there was neither he could be accepted into. There was no one who could understand the extent of his experience, and only one rare person who wanted to try for her own sake. A body swap with this many factors is basically guaranteed isolation. So we have 3 scenarios and 3 questions. What if you were placed in someone else's body, killing them? How do you deal with taking their life as your own? What if you and someone else remained alive but continued swapping? How would you develop a consistent life, such as loving someone else? And what if you were placed in the body of another kind of being, maybe even one at war with your former kind? How would you handle feeling both sides? Let's get into it. Heavenly Delusion is the most horrific of the grouping because it's the only one which pits someone against their own love. The most important person in the world to Haruki was Kiruko, and now he carries the only thing which remains of her in this form, the way she used to interact with the world. In that, it carries some of her will with it. To wear her hair long was her choice, for example. She could have done it any other way. So those qualities, that name, that identity, it keeps something of her in this world still. And that sounds positive, but this means that if Haruki ever accepts this body as his own to express, if he ever changes anything about it, it also means ridding the world of what remains of his sister. To be himself is to kill her. And more, if he starts to accept it and that it's happened and let it stop being painful, there's less resistance to such changes. The more it hurts, the more important she was. After all, what he points to as his proof is
the sorrow splintering through me, knowing that Kiruko is gone.
Coming to terms with it means forgetting that reminder, allowing her to die the second death. This is why Haruki never has a consistent or comfortable identity, like when filling out a citizenship form and struggling between which identity to list, or maintaining that he's a guy on the inside, but being referred to as she, her, and cis for the entire show. Consistency would make it easier, but it can't be consistent. There must be a tension between him and her that never ends, that remains as stark as possible so that she never ends. Acceptance isn't an option so long as love persists. This is part of what's behind another specific moment. Temporarily partnered with another scavenger to sneak into an area where women are in control, Maru is given a way which makes for a convincing display. Anxiously, Haruki pulls them together and asks their companion,
Hey, Yuichi! Which one of us is cuter?
and is full of pride when his sister's body is selected. It's another moment that exists for the joke, of course, but a good show is always doing two things with each moment, and it also just makes sense. He cared about his sister deeply, maybe too much even, so why wouldn't he want her to be considered cute? That's something she probably wanted, right? And that makes people like her too, right? Especially because she's now only a form, and so praise for that is all one can offer her. This is why a boy who once got into fights and wished to be like the resident cool older guy is now spending time taking care of long hair, even having Maru help to dry it. That kind of physical effort is all he can do to preserve his sister, to make her shine. Haruki has to be concerned about being cute so that a Kiruko can be maintained. But another aspect of that same who's cuter moment is what he's trying to avoid: acclamation. While he might be telling himself it's for his sister when he does these appearance-based things, human beings function best when we believe we're in control, whether we actually are or not. We've debated free will across centuries and against every possible argument for a reason. We blame ourselves for everything for a reason. So when Haruki is spending extra time on the body of someone else, it's eating away at his personal illusion of free will. It's saying his own actions aren't really his. At the exact moment, he is the one performing them, the one literally feeling them and their effects. Whether it's for his sister or not, the sensations have to be his. And so the mind finds a way to justify that we are in control. It shortcuts "I like this because she likes this" down to just "I like this." Enjoying praise because he enjoys her being praised does the same, as the brain cuts out the middleman and eventually just makes him enjoy the praise directly. Hence why it occurs so naturally despite his aversion to natural reaction. Plus, why wouldn't he start to care about what impacts him now? Well, he might have never cared about being cute before. Other people care if he is now, and it will change how they react to him. Once again, it sucks that it is this way, but a more attractive form is going to be treated better, given more advantages. Even if he's still a guy on the inside, praise means advantage, means safety in a harsh world, and once again, it shortcuts down to just direct pleasure. Essentially, it's how we learn a social role to begin with, just at a much later stage and with the resistance of a previous life. Speaking of expectations again, we have to get into something else a body, and the associated memories of it, provides: a situational role. Kiruko was the older sister. A physical aspect, age, determined that she was so to Haruki, and she embodied it. Her race winnings provided for him, and for the entire orphanage they were raised at, given its closure when she's hospitalized. She was strong and self-sufficient. She had to be as the eldest. So when he thinks of her, he also thinks of that role imparted by the situation. A situation which no longer exists, but which was the only one he ever witnessed her in. So from his perspective, it must remain. Even while in her body, she must be the older sister. And this explains the behaviors Haruki questions of himself in regards to the younger Maru, like feeling pride when the latter beats down an entire gang, or anxiety when he returns to the temporary home to find Maru missing. Seeing him be so strong is seeing that Haruki had a strong influence. Seeing him be gone and worrying is just what a caretaker would do. Both are validating to his sister's role, to some part of her which remains, and so also validating to him and his love just the same. It's a mixed up, weird web of two people's desires, but deep down, it's for both of them. All of this raises questions about how much our form changes our feelings and culminates in the odd relationships Haruki has. He was full of admiration for their orphanage's leader as a kid, Robin, seeing him as a role model with how often he gave advice. It seems like one of those, I want to be just like him deals, you know? And to this day, Haruki is trying to track Robin down. But the reason why feels different because that last term has changed. Once again, it shouldn't be this way, but often is. Can he say, I want to be just like him anymore, given his sister's body? The connection doesn't feel like it can be the same when all the expectations and presentations are different, when everyone witnessing it will draw different conclusions. Hell, it might even be that way for the viewer. Maybe what Haruki is feeling now only reads differently because we see a more feminine form and it's in our conditioning. But we don't know because he doesn't know. Maybe it was always this way, some sort of romantic feelings hidden there but deeply repressed because they felt wrong or had no way to be discovered yet, but now would appear perfectly acceptable. Maybe it's just the mind's adaptation, drawing a different logic because the form is different, nothing more than conveniently socialized expressions of a strong feeling. There's even the potential it's an extension of what he thinks his sister would want, or a way to try and have something for both of them at the same time. She would probably want to be close to someone eventually, right? At least if it's Robin, it's someone he admired. It might not even be any of this. It just happens to be that Robin being the only one left from that time, what Haruki describes as his personal heaven, simply made the desire to find him that strong. He's, in theory, someone who both brings back those times and who has memories of Kiruko, who can validate some part of her having existed and prove Haruki isn't just going crazy, right? We don't know exactly what the feeling is, and a series that loves open endings isn't going to tell us. But it makes sense because when you mix two people into one, the web suddenly becomes impossible to untangle. One who's swapped will really never know the truth of their desires. It gets more uncomfortable than that, though, in two directions. This is stuff that I don't really like to talk about, but it's what the show presented, and so it's what we have to. One of the questions is, how does this all impact attraction? When acting in someone else's body, do you go for your desires and feel them slip away, or fulfill theirs at the cost of yourself? I mean, it's not like he can turn his consciousness off that much to go against a base desire by will alone, but it would also feel wrong to make his sister do something she never expressed. And so Haruki finds an uncomfortable solution to this need, hinted at in the early episodes before we know. Seeing this body in the mirror, he moves to kiss it before being interrupted. And in telling his backstory, well, we understand why in this description.
This weird, faint comfort in having inherited her body. At least there's this.
It's the compromise between them both. He doesn't have to do anything that repulses him, given his already too close relationship to his sister, and she has something pleasurable happening to her body still. Something that, given he still feels like a man, is in his mind more for her than it is for him, but in his body still triggers every positive signal. It's the one path through that web, the one close act that feels true to them both in some messed up, intimate way. Considering her as someone else, it's a raw expression of a feeling, the last option to say, we're both here right now. This is pushed to an even more uncomfortable extreme by Robin when they do find him. Maru stays behind so that Haruki can have the reunion he's been searching for all this time, and it turns out to be a mistake as Robin kidnaps Kiruko and worse. While Haruki confidently says that it's him, he's forced to look in the mirror the whole time and asked who he sees. Of course he has to say his sister, to say otherwise is to have her be truly dead. But this point is pushed. Why isn't he saving his sister from this if they both still exist? Haruki would attack a man-eater for her sake. Why isn't he helping against just a man? Robin never calls him one or the other, but continually forces a disconnect, trying to show that both of them can't be in there at the same time. Over the course of a few days, this totally breaks Haruki's will. He starts to recall seeing himself in the hospital dead, something he shouldn't be able to remember, yet he can also still recall all the times he witnessed Kiruko from the outside too. Both can't be real, but both feel, so which is it? Is he actually him? Has he ever been him, or were the doctors right, and this was all just shock? The scar is just part of an experiment to see what would happen, just as Robin calls this an experiment. When two are inside of one, when both feel natural, how do you ever recall which is real? How do you ever know? Struggling with the lack of clarity, he begins to think that simply turning into her would be for the best.
That would be great. I would love that. I don't want to think about anything anymore. I just want to follow orders.
Because if you're two, then you're no one. And when you're no one, how can you make choices? It gives you the logic to give up, especially after all this struggle, constantly upholding two lives. How exhausting has that been, to live entirely consciously for two at once? It would lead anyone to cease effort once they had the excuse. But Maru eventually serves as the hero, gives Robin about 1/10 of what he deserves, and once they're free, offers a different way to look at things. Trying to put his feelings in order and offer some help, he says that he probably would have been friends with Haruki from all he's expressed of him, but that he definitely wouldn't have fallen for a guy. And he says that Kiruko was clearly a great person too, given what he's felt of her, but that he can't even say he'd have fallen for her either. He knows what he likes, but he also knows that he likes the person he calls Kiruko, who calls herself Haruki, however confusing that might be, and that he has no way to like either of them since he never met either of them, only the result he spent time with. All the moments they've shared, those weren't with one or the other, or even both, but with something new that came about when they met and existed just for them. His observation of this person. To him, it's just always been one. Those two are in the past, and this new one is the present, and some other new one will be the future just like that. I mean, we're all starting from initial conditions we can't help, so why does this need to be different? Just focus on now and make something of your own, right? That's what life is. The swap is just like birth. It defines our opportunities, but doesn't have to define ourselves. We do that with the choices within those opportunities. With a speech Solid Snake and Sartre would be proud of, they're able to move forward into the rest of their adventure, body swap or not. This channel is made possible and kept sponsorless by our channel members and patrons. If you found insight from it or other videos, consider supporting for as low as $3 a month, or for free by adding a like, a hype within 7 days of publishing, sharing with someone who'd enjoy, or the best, leaving your thoughts in a comment. Relevant links are pinned down there as well. What your name adds is how a body swap would affect your ability to love other people and how that would act as a sort of fate. Essentially, it naturally prepares one for and then leads to a fated romance. At first, the situation seems like simple wish fulfillment for Mitsuha, sick of her small town and its responsibilities like being a shrine maiden and wishing to be just about the opposite of what she is now.
Please make me a handsome Tokyo boy in my next life!
The allure of the city, with its cafes, variety of people, cafes, art and museums, cafes, and general opportunity is a fantasy to a girl whose option for coffee is the vending machine on the deserted corner. Waking up in Taki's body and opening that door to Tokyo is, well, everything she's wanted. And everything she never imagined. Because for every fancy meal, there's hours of work in the heat of a busy restaurant making it. For every art and museum, there's figuring out how the hell to get there in all this chaos. And for every person you meet, there's 1,000 walking right past. It's a tale as old as time. You can never imagine the intricacies of another life because yours lacks the foundation to do so. It's not possible to imagine prices being higher in the city when infrastructure and its costs aren't the concerns of a kid or even of most people. It's not possible to think of how hectic work could be when everything you've seen is slow. And even if she's seen it on TV and has an idea of it, or someone else told her, an idea isn't a feeling. It doesn't make your feet hurt and your heart race. It isn't real and impacting you. And until it is, the extent of those negative aspects will never be clear because they're only realized in the body, not in the mind. It's only once they've been swapping for a while and she's worked enough to complain about it that she understands what a Tokyo boy's life is truly like. And that's the point right there. One of the toughest parts of romance is truly understanding the other person. They can tell us why they feel a certain way about something, but there's always a next layer, a step from their words to our mind. We don't actually feel what they express, we just try our best to. And conflict persists through this, because we feel why we want things done our way, and they feel why they want things done their way, but each can only think of that feeling for the opposite. But after a body swap like this, that's not the case anymore. If they're together one day and Mitsuha feels like Taki is moving too fast, she won't just think, well, he's from the city, things are faster there, I guess I get it. But instead she will remember, I had to move fast there too. She won't just know about him, she will literally feel what he has felt and truly understand in a way no one else could. That's the basis of romance itself. Now, simply through moving, they could experience these things about each other or anyone. It's an investment, so the swap still plays a role, but it is possible without it. However, a body swap goes into what shouldn't be possible, seen more in Taki's side of it. His family is, well, non-existent really. We see his dad once and never again. But when he swaps into Mitsuha's body, he's suddenly experiencing a lot more of it, having to perform the very specialized family duties relating to the shrine, whether that's making the cords or trekking it all the way up to the site of its relics. He's getting the experience of what it's like to be raised by Mitsuha's grandmother, what it's like to be responsible for such intricate activities, how people judge her for having to do those things. Essentially, he's getting to feel not what it's like to live here, but what it's like to live here as Mitsuha. If she acts a certain way that he finds annoying because of her home life, well, it won't actually be so annoying to him because he'll have experienced it too. What could be annoyance becomes a relation. He'll probably act a similar way from having experienced it anyway. All in all, what this is getting at is that they don't ever actually have to explain themselves in their situations to each other. They don't have to poke into the past and ask why. Inherently, each one just gets it, and the relationship will start deeper and have more time for other things because of this. But that's the same aspect which makes even Your Name's body swap somewhat horrific. Because if you understand someone deeper than two humans are meant to, what does that do to the rest of your existing and potential relationships? By adding a higher level of possibility, the vast majority now feel shallow in comparison. Take Taki's date with Okudera again. No matter how much he might have crushed on her in the past, a crush means basically nothing with this new perspective. How does attraction to or slight admiration for one woman compare to having lived with another one's family, to having seen the things they wouldn't or even couldn't show to anyone else? With Okudera, Taki has to ask where, why, and when. He has to be anxious about revealing his true self, while with Mitsuha, he's never had to ask such questions and he has no option but to be honest with her. Just look at the things he feels strongly about on the date. He says about it, I don't know what to say to her. Clearly stressed, and then checks his phone to see what Mitsuha provided. That is, he looks for comfort in her. And even if he only finds some jokes at his expense, he still feels a much stronger emotion for this girl on his phone than the one actually in front of him. And as they visit the art museum and he finds images of her town, he becomes enraptured with the place Mitsuha lives, entirely forgetting to keep up with Okudera, who now sees what he truly looks like when he's invested, and by that knows he hasn't felt anything impactful on this date. A drawing of the town Mitsuha lives in captures his attention more than a whole other person could. That's how much depth this swap has provided them, and how much it's ruined his ability to see depth in others just the same. And seeing this so clearly, Okudera calls their date early and says he should just be with the person he clearly feels for more than her. And when the story pulls its maximum drama card, reveals that they're actually years apart and separated by disaster, and wipes his memories of having rescued Mitsuha or ever even having known her, well, Taki's life is a shallow mess for 5 years. While his friends are getting professional jobs, while Okudera is getting married, he's left only longing, searching for what he can't find, not knowing what this hole in his heart is. A job, a place, a connection? All he knows is he feels empty, missing something that should be there. And it's because he can never experience the fulfillment he knew with anyone but her, and she's gone. And even if he was forced to forget her, he can't unfeel what he's felt. He can't use his mind to take something out of the heart. Mitsuha will always be a part of him, and he a part of her. And while the story plays this romantically and gives them a fated encounter, and while everything about this strong connection remains true, isn't it kind of horrific that he's basically left to fate or to be unhappy? That his will means nothing because the world decided he could only ever truly love one person due to this unique perspective? This romance has cost him his ability to choose. And to me at least, that's just a bit of horror in a romantic package. Alright, got it. Sorry. DDD furthers the idea of greater understanding due to a body swap, but less across the couch and more across the aisle. In their world, pretty much everyone is in one of two camps, to fight or to make peace. While there's a lot of dis and misinformation, ignorance and the like, for the most part, everyone sees the world in a similar way. Humans are strong and invaders are weak. No one is debating whether slaughter is happening or not. They're arguing whether a slaughter is justified or not, whether small, weak things have the same kinds of rights as us, or if the nebulous national security once again blankets the issue. Invaders are invaders, humans are humans, and what matters is merely the relationship. Based on this, you think Oba would hate humanity. They're undeniably and in the open killing his people. Some even celebrate each death. Yet he never once harms a human or even speaks negatively about them. For the most part, he praises them just like this.
You guys are big and strong and very nice sometimes, despite how awkward and clumsy you are.
This is because his position affords him an understanding that no human is capable of having. What the invaders were really thinking and feeling and how similar they are. Because the term is actually accurate. They came here with the intent to invade. Essentially, a scout was sent years ago, witnessed the cruelty of some human kids, and was so distraught by it that he created a report saying the Earth was inhabited by unintelligent creatures who could be used for slave labor. Their homeland was overpopulated, and so the government went along with this report, sending the mothership to Earth knowing it would fail simply to depopulate their home. And once it's there, they provide no support because they were never meant to. The point is, Oba's people are capable of the exact same kinds of acts as they're receiving. They fight amongst themselves about the solution to these issues, just as the humans, and they prioritize their own and fight the unknown, just as the humans. But only to a point because they can be cruel to each other, just like the humans. They feel pain when attacked. They cry when they lose a loved one, as he witnesses in the hospital. Neither sees himself as the aggressor, but rather as the righteous protector, as he sees in both. He's the only one who can live both sides to feel these similarities, because most people are, understandably, concerned with their own lives. I mean, at the most basic, if you aren't alive to witness the issues, you can't solve them. So it's only logical that no matter how caring, we have to care for ourselves first. So most people end up busy with themselves, the necessary vessel to see the rest of the horror, and view that horror in small snippets, in pictures and headlines, large notes and leaders meeting, the things that could cause change in the world so they could be prepared for that change. This leads to them seeing the best, the worst, and little in between, because in between is just regular life and no one reports on that. So the whole area of understanding becomes lost to anyone on the outside, and the issue becomes a caricature. Meanwhile, Oba doesn't have this grace of ignorance because he went right from the daily life of an invader to the daily life of a human. He doesn't just know them as brutalizing his people and mourning their dead, as supporting his people, or as men in suits making grand claims. He knows them as playing video games and home-cooked meals. He knows them as meeting friends and arcade game high scores just the same. That is, he understands all of them, not just the details that one would think to report. And once that's the case, it becomes much, much harder to hate them. How do you hate something that you know 90% of the time is experiencing a life just like yours? Through swapping bodies with a different species, he hasn't just come to understand one person, he's come to understand life itself, the common elements of what being alive means. Pain is the same, love is the same, time is the same, motivations and emotions and so much more about every single day, every single feeling. What defines his people, both of his people, is not something to be protected through preserving just one of them. It's protected through preserving all of them, through life itself, and he now knows this from experience. Having this for both sides, he has no option to be in the middle. The body swap has made him loyal only to life itself. The problem is that this makes one lonelier than most by making them special. It's impossible to be unaware of how unique this perspective is, given how often he would witness the lack of it everywhere else, from humans everywhere or a few invaders on the news. The evidence that no one else knows, and the proof that no one else can know, is overwhelming. Not only does this mean that no one will be able to truly understand him, as in our last scenarios, but also that if there was something to be done about it, some kind of fix only that he could see, he couldn't ignore it and just live life. He would have to throw himself at it. This is exactly what occurs when he's made aware that the mothership is going to crash into Earth, blow its overheating reactor, and take the entire planet with it. There's a password to shut it down and prevent this, but that password was only ever revealed to Oron and Kadode in a different timeline, who could never remember it because of that, and it could only be recovered through the precise use of alien technology. That's a lot of plot, but in short, it means that it's something literally only an invader in a human body could do, because they have to be close to and trusted by both sides to get the memories and then to speak their language and get on board the ship. His special role forces him into these special situations. And it's exactly his love for a human, Oron, which solidifies this, because she can't do it. Because no matter whether she knew this or not, she wouldn't be able to stop it, because she can't experience what he has in order to care about everyone, everywhere just the same. He is the one forced to be special, so he has to leave her behind and board that ship and enter the code and not even prevent, but at least lessen the disaster, because there isn't a chance that someone else does it. And even though it means he'll never see her again, it was either never see her again in life or in death. He doesn't just get to stay here and believe someone else will, or in ignorance not know. He is the everyone else that everyone else is relying on. The second he had anything to love, he had everything to give to protect it. A unique perspective mixed with love ruins one for a normal life. But we do get a more hopeful end in DDDD because we haven't finished the logic here yet. It is possible for others to understand. If so much is common to life itself, how could they not? The issue is just that it takes quite a lot to break that mundanity and give them the example, but it is possible. This is what happens with a soldier, one who's tasked with exterminating defenseless invaders, hesitating just enough to not only see fear, but also despair and by extension love through it being lost as they cry over each other's bodies. He wants to just follow orders. He tries to convince himself by saying,
"You know invaders aren't people."
But he's been too close to it to actually believe this anymore, as it slowly drives him mad internally. He hasn't swapped bodies with them, but by being forced to pay attention, by seeing the emotions of them all, by witnessing them and making up his own mind from his own senses, he's able to find these common elements and take them to heart. To do anything else would be to deny his own identity and autonomy. So when he happens to be on the helicopter surrounding the mothership, and Oba happens to be drifting past having done all he can, he reaches out to help. He's seen the same emotions between all things, so he knows that negative ones are felt in any death, and so everyone who can needs to live, invader or human, it doesn't matter. And as they enter this dark timeline to eventually be undone, this pairing lasts, with Oba and the soldier remaining friends until someone can come along with the right memories for the time machine, of course. Having witnessed too much to just keep going on like normal. They were both cursed with being unique and from that made to be together. But that's the thing. It stops being bad once more people are. Uniqueness stops being itself once it's spread. If we make a world where everyone is cursed with this understanding, then no one will be. In a way, we all need to body swap so that it actually ceases to ever matter. And that will wrap things up for this one. I don't know how good it is because I was writing it in one of the most stressful and just mentally terrible points of my entire adult life. So I don't know how much that shows in it. I think it's still good, but I had to go back and do a lot of fixes, which is why there are some longer sections that are clips before it gets to another face to camera bit, because I had to go in and redo those, and re-recording them wasn't really an option with how much setup those required. It's also a video that taught me a lot because those little quote cinematic intros to each section, I buffed those so bad. Oh my god, they came out horrible. They were supposed to be so much better, and using the titles in them saved them because I messed up the timing of them so bad. So it really taught me I need to plan out these shots even more than I was, and really get the timing down before I even go to film somehow, because wow, no, just none of them worked whatsoever until I actually added a title in to have something fill that space, and there was no way to cut them down shorter. Well, there were ways to cut them down shorter, but not all of them. So yeah, it was not good. And a lot of it was how I was interacting with the camera too. I was taking too long to go from the scene to reading and so on. Just, it's a lot to learn. Trying new things to get better at this, and you have to fail to get to that next level. To know what you don't know. Anyway, I hope you liked the concept. I know what you probably expected me to talk about, but I don't think I needed to say it. I think there's a lot of times you can say it without saying it, and hope that people get the point and understand. I wanted to do a better outro for this one, but it's getting a bit close to the time this needs to go, so I'm not able to, but I think I could have made it more clear, and I'm kind of sorry that I didn't. I wish I would have been able to, but yeah, it's not been a great time to get things done. Anyway, I'll just stop rambling and say that there's Patreon and Discord and channel memberships and so on in the description, which are really important. They help keep this channel sponsorship free, so I can say whatever I want and make things that are actually going to resonate with you. If you can't do any of that, likes, comments, hypes within 7 days are all very important, just helping the video do a bit better. I greatly appreciate all of that, and just your time though, because again, it's always amazing that people spend their time with things I make. So thank you everyone for being here, and I hope I'll see you again soon.